Hey guys, every day is awesome. We just have to get through it. Welcome back to Human Velocity X, Episode 6. My name isn't important. The message is, before we begin, notice this. The quiet between my voice and your breathing. That space right there, that's what today's episode is about. Silence. Not as nothingness, but as language. And why you've always heard it when others only hear the absence of noise. Segment 1, the sound inside silence. Silence isn't empty. It's never been empty for you. People think silence means nothing happening, but you've always known better. You felt that silence is where truth gathers, not loudly, not urgently, just patiently. There is silence after noise, when the room is still recalibrating. Silence before confession, when words are forming but courage hasn't arrived yet. Silence during tension, where breath shortens and eyes avoid each other. Silence inside someone's pause, when the real sentence is almost spoken but not quite. Silence that hides fear. Silence that reveals truth. Silence that heals. Silence that hurts. Silence that hopes. You've always heard all of these, even when you didn't know you were listening. Because silence carries weight. Tone disappears, but atmosphere remains. Most people rush to fill silence. They joke, they explain, they change the subject. You don't. You lean in, not to interrogate it, to understand it. Because silence is rarely absence. It's compression. It's signal without language. And when you sit with it long enough, something begins to surface. But the silence. Sit. You didn't hear. You feel something in it. A subtle pressure, a quiet presence that alone tells you who you are. You're not afraid of what isn't spoken. You're tuned to it. And the tuning, that's not emptiness. That's awareness. Segment 2, everyday silence. Picture this. You're at a grocery store checkout. Fluorescent lights beating scanner. Plastic bags rustling. The cashier smiles, asks how your day is. Scans a few items, you ask back. They say, I'm okay. And right after that is a silence. Barely a second. But it lingers. Most people don't notice. They're checking their phone, thinking about their list, ready to leave. You do. That half-second pause is the weight of a paragraph. Not dramatic, not tragic, just heavier than it should be. The tone landed one way, the words another. There was a drop in energy, a slight flattening, a micro shift in breath. It wasn't what they said. It was what didn't follow. You don't say anything. You're not trying to expose them. You're not trying to fix anything. You just register. That silence between syllables. The space where something real almost surfaced. You feel the gap between presentation and truth. And we carry on, you pay, you leave, you step back into the parking lot. But the moment stays with you. Not because you're overthinking, because you're listening. That silence spoke, and you heard it. You always have. Segment 3, a moment. There was a conversation once. Someone close. Their words were steady, but the silence between their sentences was trembling. Every time they paused, my chest tightened slightly. Not fear, recognition. And the silence said, there's something here. Later, the truth surfaced. Not because I pushed, not because I asked, because storms break when they've waited long enough. And I realized the silence told the story before their words dared to. You know that feeling? It's familiar. It's part of you. Just breathe. Segment 4. Why silence speaks to you. Silence speaks because silence can't pretend. Words can. Words can be arranged, edited, polished. They can be aimed to impress, to offend, to distract. Noise gives people room to perform. In noise, you can hide behind rhythm, behind speed, behind certainty. But in silence, there's no script, there's no applause, there's only what's actually there. Noise is rehearsed, silence is revealing. Not dramatic, just accurate. Most people stay focused on content. You notice context, you listen to hesitation. The breeze shifts to the half-second pause before someone answers a simple question. You hear the gap between sentences, the quiet after a lie when something feels slightly off. Even if the words sound clean, the quiet before truth when the air changes, like something is about to surface. You don't interrogate it, you don't dramatize it, you just feel it. And that feeling isn't imagination, it's calibration. This isn't overthinking. Overthinking chases stories. This doesn't chase, it registers, it's resonance. Your internal instrument responding to misalignment. Truth before language, stigma before speech. Silence speaks to you because you're willing to stay where others rush to escape, and that tells you something steady about who you are. Segment 5. Reflection. Whose silence have you been listening to lately? Not to fix, not to decode, not to confront, just to recognize a partner. The way they answer quickly but linger afterward. A parent, the things they don't say anymore. A friend, the jokes that carry a little weight. A coworker, the pause before it's all good. Your child, the quiet that replaced questions, or yourself. The silence after you say, I'm fine. The gap between what you're carrying and what you're willing to admit. Let that question land without turning it into a project. You don't have to solve anything. Just notice where your attention has already been drawn, because sometimes silence is the loudest part of a relationship. Not because something is broken, but because something is waiting. And when you're willing to acknowledge that, without rushing it, without forcing it, you create space, and space handled gently is where honesty begins. Segment 6. The two silences. There were two silences you've always understood. The first, silence that protects, the silence of fear, uncertainty, of not being ready yet. The silence someone uses to hold themselves together. You felt that one. You don't push it. You don't force it open, you respect it. Because sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's self-preservation. You can tell when someone isn't hiding, they're bracing, and you give that space. And there's the other kind. Silence that reveals, the pause that carries truth just beneath the surface. The gap that carries guilt, waiting for courage. The breath that carries longing for connection, for relief, for someone to notice. That silence feels different. It isn't guarded, it's heavy, it leans forward, it wants to be spoken but hasn't found the words. And you don't need a translation. You feel which silence is which. You sense when to wait, when to soften, and to stay quiet, and when to stay present. You've always known the difference between hiding and holding, between fear and forming truth. No one taught you this. You didn't study it. You were fluent in the language between sentences. Fluent in the space where honesty gathers before it speaks. And that fluency is not something you acquired. It's something you've always carried. Just breathe. Segment 7. Silence isn't always heavy. You ever notice how some people think, I'm fine, covers everything? 2 words, clean, efficient. But that tiny pause before it, that's the autobiography. That half-second hesitation holds chapters, not because they're lying, but because something inside them is deciding how much to reveal. Silence doesn't lie. It doesn't argue, it doesn't exaggerate, it whispers. And you've always had good hearing. You don't chase it, you don't corner it, you just notice. But not all silence is tension. There's another kind. The silence that feels safe, the quiet in a car ride with someone you trust. No music, no pressure to talk, just shared space. The silence where no performance is needed, no explaining, no defending, no proving. The silence where your shoulders drop without you realizing they were raised, the kind where breathing slows and nothing feels urgent. You feel storms early, but you feel peace early too. You sense misalignment, but you also sense safety. You know when the air is thick and when it's clear. Silence isn't always warning. Sometimes it's arrival. Sometimes it's trust. Sometimes it's the proof that nothing needs to be said because everything already is. Silence isn't always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's home, and you always know the difference. Reflection or truth have you heard in someone's silence but never said out loud? Your awareness has guided you longer than your logic realized. Segment 8, why most don't hear it. Most people treat silence like a void, awkward, uncomfortable, something that needs fixing. If the room goes quiet, they rush to repair it. They fill it with talking, jokes, noise, explanations. Anything to smooth the space before it stretches too long, because silence can feel exposing. In silence, there's no distraction, no buffer, no script to lean on, so it gets labeled as tension, even when it's simply space. You don't feel silence. You explore it. Not dramatically, not theatrically, you just stay. You notice what shifts when words disappear. You feel what surfaces when a performance pauses. Silence is where resonance becomes audible. When there's no competing volume, signal sharpens, tone stands out, breath becomes clear, energy reveals its direction. Most people hear absence. You hear information. You don't need the noise to tell you what's happening. You're listening beneath it. And that's why silence doesn't threaten you. It informs you, it steadies you. Because in the quiet, you can finally hear what's actually there. And you've always listened. Segment 9, the permission. Here's the shift. Just because you hear silence doesn't mean you're responsible for it. Awareness is not assignment. You don't have to fix every pause. You don't have to smooth every gap. You don't have to rescue discomfort. Just because you're sensed at first. Some silences are falling. Some are protecting. Some are waiting. And not all of them are yours to move. You don't have to translate truth before someone is ready to speak it. You don't have to carry what hasn't been handed to you. There's a difference between noticing and intervening, between understanding and absorbing. You're allowed to listen without taking it all. You're allowed to feel the shift without becoming the solution. You're allowed to recognize tension and still stay steady. Silence speaks. It reveals. It gathers and informs. But it doesn't assign you the job of translator. You are the listener, not the fixer, not the rescuer, just the one who hears clearly and stays grounded. And sometimes, it's more than enough. Just breathe. Grounding. Take a soft breath. In. Out. Say quietly. I hear what others don't say. Silence doesn't frighten me. I can listen without fixing. I can sense truth without carrying it. Segment 10, identity return. If you've always understood the emotional shape of silence, if you've always known the truth behind hesitation, if you felt the shift before the sentence formed, there was never anything wrong with you. Not then, not now. You weren't reading too deep, you weren't inventing meaning where there was none. Maybe you weren't hearing too much. Maybe you were hearing first. First to notice the pause, first to sense the misalignment, first to recognize when something was about to surface. And when you don't have language for that early awareness, it can feel isolating. Like you're ahead of a conversation that hasn't started yet, like you're carrying context no one else acknowledged. But that doesn't make you strange, it makes you tuned. That's the mark of a reasoner. Not louder, not sharper, just earlier. Awareness before language, truth before confession, stillness before understanding. You don't need applause for that. You don't need permission. You just need to recognize what you've always been doing, listening and knowing before the room catches up. Segment 11, final realization. Remember this. Silence is not empty, it is full. Full of pauses that mean something, full of sentences that are almost formed, full of truths waiting for courage. It carries what people are still organizing inside themselves, what they're unsure how to say, what they're afraid to admit, what they haven't found language for yet. Silence isn't absence, it's compression. It's truth without vocabulary, and you've always had the ears to hear it. Not because you were looking for it, because you stayed. Because you didn't rush to fill it, because you weren't afraid of what might surface. It's not burden, burden is carrying what isn't yours. This is clarity, clarity is noticing without absorbing, understanding without controlling, listening without losing yourself. It's resonance. Signal meeting signal awareness, recognizing alignment before explanation arrives. That's you, not dramatic, not mystical, just tuned. And once you stop questioning that tuning, silence stops feeling heavy, it starts feeling honest. And honest is where you've always been strongest. Thanks for sharing this quiet space with me. You're a reason your ability to hear the unsaid is proof of your awareness. Next time, why some people drain your energy instantly, and what your internal resonance field is trying to tell you. Every day's awesome. We just have to get through it. Dedicated to those whose silence said everything and was still ignored. I'll see you in episode 7.